Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Fantastic, because I can barely hear myself, but I cannot bring myself to wearing headset when speaking. Nice to meet everyone, first of all. Great to be kicking off the stage in this hall at MadFest. Couple of introductions from our side. My name is Giovanni. I'm Platform Director for Europe at Adlook. And here we have Mateusz as well.
Nice to meet you, everyone. Hi, I'm running product branding solution and things related to what we do.
Great. So we have about 40 minutes together, and we want to split this session in a couple of parts. So in the first part, we're going to go through sort of a history of why we're here today, talking about cookieless, and giving you also like our perspective of where the industry is going, our positioning. In the second half, we'll also talk about what are the practical solutions that we think marketers should approach, and we'll hopefully deep dive in a couple of solutions which I think are quite interesting, and we'd love to leave some time at the end for Q&A, any questions. So if you have some feedback, questions at the end, feel free to raise your hand, or you can find us after the session as well if you have any thoughts. Cool. So kicking off, firstly, with an introduction about our group, about Adlook. If you don't know about Adlook, you probably are more familiar with RTB House. RTB House, you probably know about them. They are probably one of the powerhouses of European ad tech. It's obviously a global success story, but we're very proud to be part of a European company. 1,500 employees globally, and primarily focused on the performance business. They built technology that over the last 10 years plus has been delivering outcomes and performance for brands and agencies. And off the back of this solution, over the last couple of years, the company has invested into a separate technology, which is Adlook, our company and our business. And we're going to talk about Adlook in a bit. But generally, Adlook is a self-service DSP built on top of RTB House technology. And we work across full funnel, so from lower funnel up to upper funnel. And over the last couple of years, we've been building the tech and working with clients and agencies. Globally, you can see some of our success case studies here. If you can manage to use the QR code, you'll find a bit more on our website. But generally, we've been working very well. We've been getting some tractions across the world with our solutions, which we're very excited about. And generally, we have a few USPs, but probably the one that we are most famous for is our approach to cookieless. We have building this technology over the last couple of years, which means that we knew what kind of technology we were dealing with, the kind of environment we were dealing with. So we put cookieless at the center of everything that we do. And when we say here we create the cookieless space, it's because we have we contributed in the space in 3 different ways. First of all, working with industry players like Chrome when it comes to Privacy Sandbox. We've been one of the designers with them of Privacy Sandbox. We have been one of the early testers of these solutions, of any cookieless solutions in the space, for example, with Protected Audience CPI. And when it comes to adoption as well, in fact, Adlook was the first DSP to ever integrate with Topic CPI, which we've been one of the very first and primary adopters of this. And we're going to touch on these topics in a bit later on. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Mateusz, who's going to tell us a bit more how we got to do cookieless deprecation, why, and how we're looking at things from our side. Over to you.
Thank you, Gio. And once again, it's great to be here in front of you guys. So as Gio mentioned, to understand the topic of cookieless and where we are heading, we need to first understand where we are coming from. And for that, there is a very important distinction we need to make at the very beginning of our masterclass. There are 2 flavors of cookies. And whenever we think about cookieless, whenever we speak cookieless in the context of ad tech, we are speaking about a specific kind of them. So the first type of cookie is the first-party cookie. We use them all. Those are the data. Those are the little pieces of data stored in our browser that are improving our everyday experience. Whenever you click "Remember Me" on the login page, whenever you add something to the basket and it stays there before you make a purchase, you are using a first-party cookie. They are essential for user experience, and they are going to stay with us for a long, long time. And there is a second flavor of cookie, the third-party cookie. And those cookies will be gone. They are primarily used by ad tech players. They are used for cross-site tracking. They are essentially a currency, a sort of identifier that is present across different browsers, across the different pages that we all browse. And now, why they are going away? To understand the reasons why cookies are going away, we need to look at the bid request. So this is a bid request. Bid request is something that is being delivered to a platform like ours every time a user goes on a page and there is an ad slot that is loading. Every time you go on a page and there is an ad slot, there is an auction going on in the background. The bid request is generated. It's sent to different players within the industry. And the different players can also exchange those bid requests. They can pass it on. They can pass it further. This all leads to a multiplication of bid requests, and this sort of data is flowing across different ad tech players every time you go on a page. And at peak times for a global platform like ours, it can reach the levels of 20, 30 million bid requests per every second. And now, why the third-party cookies are tricky from this perspective? First of all, the bid request is something that we use to understand who is the user behind what are we trying to buy. As a piece of this bid request, there is a user device and a browser. So very specific identification. It says that I'm using an iPhone. It tells me the browser version. It tells me the system version. So a quite specific information on my device. Then there is the user location. And depending on the consent the user has given, depending on the data available to publisher, it can be a more general one. So it can be just a country. It can be a region. It can be city. But sometimes those can be also very precise coordinates, which can be used for micro-targeting. And then there's the main part, so user identifier, stable identifier that is used between different ad tech players to understand the identity and to exchange the knowledge about the user. And currently, as of 2024, this is the main, the third-party cookies are the main source, are the main base for different identities. So removing third-party cookies from the ecosystem means removing the stable identifier from this piece of bid request that all the ad tech players use millions of times every second. Now, of course, consumers are not that technical. Consumers have never seen a bid request. This is all happening in the background. But they feel that there is something going on. Those are the results from the research that we have run with our counterparts. But if you look at across the industry, across different researches, the conclusions are quite clear. Consumers are concerned about the data. They are concerned about how their data are handled. They are not sure what's actually happening with the data once they give a consent. But they also say they very much like the personalized experience. They like the experience of the ads. And they are willing to exchange some information if it's improving their experience, but also if they understand what is happening with the data they share. And of course, consumers are very important for brands, for platforms like ours, but they are also very important for regulators. And regulators are seeing those user concerns and they are acting upon them. Europe was the first GDPR. I think most of us, all of us remember 2018. We pretty much needed the regulation. We needed something that will set a guidelines for how we handle the data. Then the US followed with California Consumer Protection Act, and then it went. Actually, at some point this year, between different conferences, we decided that we will just run a quarterly update of those maps because literally every week there is a new country, new region popping up. So this is now a global trend. The importance of how data are handled, the importance of privacy implications, how companies are storing the data, is the data exchange in a consented way? Those are all the things which are crucial. And right now, anyone in the marketing department is probably spending a fair amount of time with their legal team on making sure that whatever they do is compliant from a data privacy perspective. And of course, regulators are acting, and the browsers, technology vendors need to react. GDPR was happening at the same time where Safari decided to remove third-party cookies. This was quite a substantial move. they did it in a way that has not provided a valuable alternatives for ad tech players like us, and we can actually see the impact of this by now. If you look at the prices of transactions on the Safari traffic, they are substantially lower versus traffic that has a third-party cookie attached to it. So this is something that's the impact, that's the change that happened, and we can still see the implications of that. Then Mozilla followed, and around 2019 there was the first announcement of Chrome planning to remove third-party cookies from the browser. It was a very interesting time. We as a group, you were lucky to be a part of those early conversations. A funny story is that at this point there were even some talks about how to remove every single piece of information you saw there on the bid request, but just leave the cookie, just leave the user identifier. That's how valuable the identifier is for a lot of the marketers. Then US CCPA and finally Apple included extended privacy tracking, privacy protection. So right now, if you're an Apple user, you can log in. Whenever you log in with Apple, you can choose to hide your email. It's essentially decrypted, useless for the other side for the purpose of targeting or measurement. And then 2025 is the time where Chrome said they will finally remove third-party cookies, whether it's the ultimate deadline, we'll chat about that in a second. And also Microsoft Edge follows with solutions which are similar to privacy Sandbox. So I think the trend is evident. We are heading to the place where there will be zero third-party cookies available across all the browsers. It's not just Safari, Edge, Mozilla, Chrome will follow. But why Chrome is so important? We removed third-party cookies from a couple of browsers, leading ones, and we were not going crazy about it. So why Chrome is so important? The answer is here on this slide. Removing third-party cookies from Chrome is actually removing a stable identifier from over half of the open internet. And whether you are a marketer, you are a platform, you're a publisher, over half of what you do in the open web is dependent in some way, shape, or form on third-party cookie. This is a fairly known fact, but there is also a more interesting fact that some of the other browsers like Edge are based on the same engine as Chrome. So even though they are not replicating solution one-on-one, whatever Chrome decides to do, it also has a broader impact than just the Chrome browsers. And if you sum it up, it's actually closer to 70% of the global browser traffic. A lot of people say, luckily, Google delayed third-party cookie removal again. It was planned for this year. Chrome announced that they will actually postpone it to early 2025. Does it mean that we don't need to worry about it? No, the trend is evident. The third-party cookies are going away. There are essentially two reasons why the delay was happening. One was related to the latency issues. Fundamental idea of privacy Sandbox is that whatever is happening with your data, it stays on the device. So also anything that needs to happen to display the ad, things like running the auction, complaining how much to pay for an ad, this is all happening on the device, which is quite a resource-consuming operation, and there needs to be a further work done on how to streamline that, how to make it more efficient and faster. And the other objections were related to Google tech stack and potential implications on self-preferencing on the Chrome browser. And it's actually a very important aspect. So the regulatory aspect and self-preferencing, or in general the competition in the market. Google controls the browser for sure, but it also has a ton of different services. It has a demand side, it has a supply side. It sits on both sides of the pond. That's why regulators are heavily watching Google, and any changes that will be done needs to be approved by the regulators. That's why third-party cookie removal on Chrome takes a bit of time. There needs to be a consensus on the market on how we do that. Firstly, because it's over half of the open web, 64% plus, and secondly, because Google is actually a very large company that has a lot of the businesses around the consumer data, around the advertising. So regulators are really watching closely that. So I think what is apparent at this stage is that we are about to face the most significant transformation in the digital advertising. We've been using third-party cookies for probably like 25 years now. It's been a consistent currency. It's been our language of ad tech platforms, marketers. So what's actually going to change if we remove third-party cookies? The very first thing that comes to everyone's minds is probably targeting. So how we activate the audience, whether it's a third-party data, whether it's first-party data, CRM data that brands, retailers data, those kind of activities will be impacted because they've been relying on this idea that there is some sort of identifier of me as a user that multiple parties can exchange and understand that it's ultimately Mateusz who's browsing the web in a couple of different places for a couple of different publishers, perhaps even devices. Then there is a measurement, very important, especially around frequency management attribution. Stable identifier cross-domain is very useful to measure how many ad impressions there is delivered to a user, and very important to measure the outcomes of the campaigns that marketers are running. And then last but not least, insights and data. For use cases like brand or ad recall, the third-party cookies are there because essentially for those kind of studies you need to understand the group, who was the exposed group, who was the control group, and a very convenient method to do that is to use a third-party cookie as an identifier. But this is also tied to a broader area of campaign optimization. Understanding the performance on the user level helps to make the campaigns more efficient. And as a response to those changes, which were essentially started back in 2019, where Chrome sent a first announcement, we could see that there are two approaches emerge. There are a group of companies, ad tech players, or simply just ideas that are coexisting as we speak. The first group of solution is focused on replicating the ID, creating a stable ID that will provide the same advantages as cookie does. Unfortunately, because it is providing the same advantages, it also has the same flaws. So a stable identifier, you remember the bid request and data stored there. Every time, as long as the industry will have a stable identifier, those issues will continue to persist, and we need to deal with that. And the other group of solution is actually taking a step back and having a broader look at what can we do, how can we deliver the marketers products that they expect, how can we deliver to consumers the ads, the experience that they expect, without intruding their privacy, without handling the data in an unsafe way. And it seems that the first group of solution has been struggling a bit. It's the core issues related to stable identifier that is exchanged between multiple ad tech vendors, whether it's buy side, sell side, data management platforms, persists. And the regulators are seeing that, consumers are seeing that. And those solutions are struggling a bit when it comes to the press. But more importantly, what we are seeing is also the data supporting this view. If you look at the traffic, if you look at the percentage of traffic that can be addressed by those alternative identity solutions, which replicate the third-party cookie solutions, they are struggling with the scale. Currently, 64% of EMEA traffic we see is ID-less. This means that when third-party cookie is gone, there will be no stable identifier for those users for this traffic. Then there is a fair share of probabilistic identifiers. And probabilistic identifiers are in general relying on those additional signals that you saw a few slides back. User agent, IP address, geolocation. Those are all the signals which are being used to recreate the user identity on the probabilistic basis. However, the browsers are actively fighting against any fingerprinting solution. The device ID, the IP address, they are not created, they are not in the bid request for the purpose of user identification. They're actually there to make sure that the ad experience is smooth. They are there to fight fraudulent traffic. So trying to recreate an ID out of that is something that browsers are not allowing. And this is something they are actively fighting. There is a clear roadmap that says we are going to randomize IP address, we are going to truncate IP address, we are going to shorten the device agent. So you are not able to tell precisely that this is really the same device across different users. And then there is the smallest part of the pie chart. This is deterministic IDs. So deterministic ID is a type of identifier where both sides have a stable identifier, such as email address on both sides. And the idea is great. It recreates a one-to-one matching. It gives a lot of flexibility to marketers. It allows for a very precise frequency capping, attribution, running different research studies. The issue is the scale. 8% and 8% currently, and it's actually been on this level since a few years. We have not seen on our side a growing adoption of this solution. So what I'd like to highlight once again is that as of now, 64% of the traffic is ID-less, and then we can expect that the remaining 28% of probabilistic will also join the ID-less pie chart as the browsers are actively fighting any fingerprinting solutions. So now that we have defined the problem and give you the overview, let me pass the voice back to Giovanni to talk about how we can address those.
Thank you, Mateusz. So yeah, Mateusz walked us through a bit of the context, a bit of the history, and how we got here when it comes to cookieless, and also what's the outlook as well for the different solutions available in the market. So in the next few slides, we're going to tell you a bit more about how we are seeing the landscape. And from our perspective, when it comes to cookieless targeting, we can break out the solutions, the available alternatives, into 3 different areas. So cookieless, proprietary solutions, browser APIs, and alternative IDs. When it comes to cookieless, obviously contextual is going to be a very important and very powerful tool for all marketers alike, where everybody's talking about it. And the reality is that contextual does offer the scale, the tech reliance, and the accuracy, a good level of accuracy when it comes to reaching the relevant users. But also, having built the platform in the last couple of years put us in the viable position to be able to benefit from new and hot topics perhaps that are happening in the industry. For example, content GTP, which is a bit of a buzzword, but it does mean that we can leverage some of the latest AI technologies to build audiences and be able to reach users at scale without relying on IDs again. And we're going to touch on this later. Then we have browser APIs. So definitely, as cookies go away, especially from Chrome, relying on the infrastructure that is going to replace the cookies will be fundamental. So we talked about Privacy Sandbox. We talked about the fact that we've been working very closely with Chrome to design, adopt, and test the solutions. So here we have the Topics API as well as the Protected Audience API. Both solutions very important for different purposes. Topics API very powerful from the perspective of reaching users in market or interested or categorized under specific topics. Protected Audience, which is still in very early testing phases, will be very important for reaching your first-party data across the web. And finally, we have alternative IDs, which Mateusz has talked about it. You might have heard about these solutions available in market from different players. There is a lot of marketing around it. The reality is that, especially in a market like Europe, very fragmented, very regulated, there's just not enough of them. Authenticated IDs are the gold standard when it comes to measurement, attribution, targeting. They're great. They're better than cookies. The reality is just there's not enough of them to be able to run marketing and precision at scale, and generally to be able to hold to the promise of programmatic, which is using data to run mass marketing at scale. So obviously, all of these ones will deserve 1-hour session for each, but in the context of time, we're going to double down on a couple of solutions which we had quite a lot of experience on in the last few years, which are Content GTP and Topics API. Starting with Topics API and Privacy Sandbox. Generally, as some of you may already know how this works, but the context behind this is that we can via Topics API, once the user opts in to this technology, we are able to, the browser is able to classify this user according to their browsing history, their browsing behaviors. For example, if I browse a variety of news or finance websites, I might be classified into topics related to finance, or likewise for sports or entertainment and so on and so on. There is 460 plus different topics that we might be categorized in. And I quite like this, to be honest. Privacy Sandbox in general is getting a lot of bashing in the press around, understandably, some of the limitations today. But the reality is that from a, let's say, from a user perspective, but also from a marketer perspective, it resolves a lot of problems. I don't know if there is any data providers here in the room. I worked with very great data providers in the past, third-party data providers. But the reality is that data providers at times can be a bit, let's say, not transparent in the way data is collected, why a user might end up in a data provider versus another. Whereas Privacy Sandbox effectively democratizes the way we as users are classified into different topics, how we get there, and what is the methodology and the technology behind. So from different purposes, it does resolve and does level up the way data, let's say, data is shared across the users and how marketers can use this data. And also, as I said, Privacy Sandbox getting a lot of press, good and bad, and there is a lot of people talking about how bad it might be and what are the limitations and so on. The reality is that on the other side, the users are adopting Privacy Sandbox and Topics API. I think they started to roll this out at the end of last year, and you can see here the trend of adoption of Topics API and effectively the bid request available for marketers for Topics API today, which means that, as you can see, there's about, this is a bit of an outdated graph. I think by now, in July, we crossed the 35 billion bid requests per day that we receive and we can use for our campaigns. So much so that today our marketers are leveraging different topics and Topics API in general for their campaigns. Again, it's a solution that is available today and it's ready there to be tested, and it's cookieless. And here, I'm going to skip this through quickly, but if you want, you can check yourself. It's an exercise if you want to test on your laptop which topics you might belong to. So if you Google this page, if you take a picture and you go home and check on your browser, you can check as well what topics you might fall in. And again, here, I think this one we took it from Mateusz, so it's in Polish, but you will be able to see on your laptop which topics you belong to, and also which are the different players that you've been connected with by your Chrome API. So we talked about Privacy Sandbox, Topics API. Second part, we wanted to talk about Content GTP. As I mentioned, it's a bit of a buzzword right now, but it's quite cool from our perspective. So the way we approach this is via a company called Prime Audience, also part of the RTB House Group family. And effectively, it's an audience builder tool that relies on generative AI to build audiences and syndicate them to the DSP to activate campaigns. Essentially, the way it works, again, it's pretty cool. We would input a prompt, for example, users interested in buying a car, users interested in I don't know, in market for something, people looking for travel destinations and so on. And we can, off the back of that, we get a real-time overview of the different granular URL and websites that users, this type of users, are browsing. And this is completely cookieless again. And we activate it today across a variety of campaigns, whether in-market campaigns, consideration campaigns, but also awareness campaigns. And they are and they're very effective. We also have a lot of case studies around this, so if you have any questions, feel free to stop us after the session. But we also wanted to do a live demo on our side here and show you a bit more how it works. We don't trust too much the interconnection, so we created a few prompts already before, but this is to give an idea the results that we will look like. For example, today, pretty cold. We are on the 4th autumn probably, so we looked for people interested in traveling to warmer places, and you can see the sort of URLs and results that you get from such prompt. Or here we have, for example, people interested in buying phones, so you can see here all the different options, all very granular, all very relevant for the users that we're looking for. And finally, as well, for example, people interested in buying a car in the UK. The very cool thing about this is that it gives the results in real time. They're all very pertinent. And if, for example, if we click here, where we see this, it also gives an understanding of why this URL is in this list and what are the users behind that we can find in this result. So again, the bottom line of this is that obviously marketers are very scary and very wary of the different solutions. Mateusz mentioned it. All of us probably are here for the same reasons. Removing cookies from the ecosystem is a big problem. But the reality is that there are a lot of solutions in market today that are cookieless, don't rely on IDs, don't overcomplicate our legal teams, and they're available to start, to use now. They're available to test now, whether it's browser APIs, infrastructures like topics, for example, or other proprietary solutions or third-party solutions available in market, or also alternative IDs, which again should be looked at more as a complementary solution to a wider approach to cookieless, which cannot work in isolation due to scale issues, and should be looked at in complementarity. So I think we're wrapping this up, and thank you very much, everyone, and hope to speak to you soon. If you want to reach out to us, these are our emails. There's a QR code, which I'm not actually sure where it redirects to, but these are our emails if you have any questions, and feel free to stop us. We're going to be around for any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, chaps. I'd just like to open up to the floor if you have any questions while we have the guys on stage. Straight down the front.
Hi, you mentioned about the tremendous value of IDs at the beginning of the presentation and why they've been so widely used. And of course, they're used in other industries like payments and telecoms and things like that. So why do you think the ID for advertising that's comparatively harmless compared to, say, payments and telecoms? Okay. So you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that IDs have tremendous value at the very beginning. And of course, IDs are used in other sectors like payments and telecoms and things like that. Why do you think that the ID is being so demonized for this kind of low-risk use case of advertising? And why isn't there more focus on actually retaining IDs whilst preserving privacy, rather than looking at other solutions which are certainly problematic based on your own research?
I can start, and then please add any thoughts, Gio. I think one of the reasons for that has been how easy it is to actually enter the programmatic landscape. Anyone can create a block, anyone create an ad slot and start sending those bid requests. There are multiple DSPs which allows you to start with a very low barrier of entry, just your credit card, starting buying the traffic. There is a lot of DMPs and a lot of marketplaces who are actually willing to take a lot of the data. So I think one of the issues has been it's relatively easy to become connected to the industry, and then the volume of bid requests, how those bid requests are handled, it is very easy to take control of the data, and it's really easy to it's easy for bad actors to just listen to whatever is in the bid stream and then try to create their own solutions or hijack the data or misuse the data. I think that has been those are the two primary reasons: the volume of data flowing and how easy it is to enter.
Yeah, I second that. It's definitely very easy to start to use IDs for advertising purposes, but also from a scrutiny perspective, I think I'll use a reference one event, which is Cambridge Analytica back in the days, which I think clearly outlines the risks of using advertising for much broader and much more problematic.
But Cambridge Analytica didn't use cookies. It was all entirely on first.
No, but it still relies
data.
on that. Yeah, but it still relies on data in general for advertising and how advertising data is used and so on. I think from a consumer perspective, and regulators especially, because we've seen probably in the past how much regulators know about data and how these are transferred and where they exist and so on. I think the scrutiny is around data in general and advertising, the connection between the two.
So I think I heard that cleaning up the ecosystem and maybe bringing regulation like we have in telecoms and payments has not been something that's been properly explored yet. Thank you for clarifying.
I think we've got another question here. Yep.
Thanks so much for the talk. I'm a little bit late, but it was great to hear. I had a couple of questions on Topics API, Privacy Sandbox. First off is, I think you said originally that this was like, you can opt into it. Is that kind of still user pushed, basically, user initiated, or is people opted in by default to the system? And how does that actually differ from typical like contextual topic targeting you might get through like keywords or topics or something like that through like Google Display Network very simply?
Sure. So in terms of opt-in versus opt-out, it is currently opt-in since a few versions of Chrome. It is opt-in, but the scale you saw here is growing is essentially is a combination of two factors. One, a growing number of browsers who are saving the data on Topics API, and the other part, equally important, is the adoption in the ecosystem. Topics is a mechanism where you either can witness the user directly or you can witness the user and pass the data through the bitstream, and the growing adoption is a function of those two. So it's opt-in for a large amount of users using up-to-date Chrome version. But then how this signal is passed on, this is something that depends on the ad tech ecosystem and how different players are connected. So that was the first question. If you could remind the second one.
How does it differ from typical contextual targeting via like keywords or topics?
Yeah, sure. So sure. So contextual, when you target contextually, you are essentially responding to whatever user is browsing here and now. So if I'm looking for a family SUV, I'm on this very specific page here and now. The Topics API, it uses the same mechanism to categorize the user, but then the signal is available as the user is going also on different pages. So it's more a behavioral. It's not only in this very specific moment. We can find the user who is interested in cars but is not currently browsing the car page, the car-related page, which essentially helps with the scale. It helps to reach the user across
like
different
topical
options.
interest, basically.
Correct.
Cool.
Excellent. Any more questions while we've got the guys on stage? We've got one in the corner here.
I think that was probably the most positive presentation I've sat through for Privacy Sandbox outside of sort of Google's representative, so it's interesting to hear your view there. Just in terms of scalability with the Topics API, are you not worried about the total number of sort of topics you can be opted into at one time? It seems quite a limitation at this point still to me.
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, in the general thoughts about Privacy Sandbox, we think it's a very valuable idea that needs further work. There has been recently a post by Tricarico, and we are actually having the same observations on what are the flaws of the Privacy Sandbox and what needs to be improved. So we definitely appreciate the context, and I think it's a solution that has a chance to rewire the industry as a whole, but it needs further work. So I just want to be 100% clear on that. And then the second part about the Topics API, there are two ways we are looking at the Topics API. First of all, we are looking at this as a standalone signal, and for that, of course, scale is very relevant, and it's not yet at the stage where we can have an entire campaign running off of the signal. But perhaps the even more interesting use case of a Topics API signal is powering our AI models for campaign optimizations. So it's not a standalone signal. If it's there, we target the user. If it's not there, we are not targeting the user. It's more a kind of additional signal that allows us to predict the user behavior more accurately without relying on the user identifier. And we can use the Topic API signal together with things we learn from the page. So from our crawler, so the context, we can see if the context matches the topics. If yes, it's probably a signal that increases the chance that that's the right user related to this topic. It can also be used for a variety of applications in terms of DCO and how we think about the creatives. And this is perhaps an even more interesting use case that we are also exploring right now. For that, scale is needed as well. But once you add additional signals, you are no longer dependent solely on the adoption of Topics API. It is still very useful, even if it's just a part of the traffic we see.
In your opinion, will it get enough scale?
I think as it ultimately depends on the browser, and the browser has a large market share. I think it will get enough scale. Currently, the biggest bottleneck is not the amount of browsers that is witnessing the Topics API, but how the signal is passed on. But the trend is there. The trend is there. We are at the point where we are having not the entire campaigns, but we are having a line items across the globe pretty much with our clients who are running on Topics API. They are testing, seeing how it performs. So it's large enough to test, that's for sure. And the trend is positive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being such an interactive crowd, and thank you very much, Mateusz and Giovanni, for a fantastic masterclass and kicking off the show. Thank you very much. Round of applause, please.